A flurry of rule changes rocks the NASCAR world deep into the off season, where the drivers are still out in Hawaii or down in Florida or chilling at home playing iRacing, whatever they may be doing. But the landscape of NASCAR is once again tweaked. Just some tweaks, but just enough to get me a little bit irritated enough to come on here and make a whole full-blown video on this. So, without further ado, listening on podcast, make sure to hit the follow button and download the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we got racing, we got football. That's all you really need in life. Racing, football. What else? So, let's dive in, shall we? So with Motorsport.com, made by Nick DeGroot, NASCAR announces a flurry of major rule changes. And okay. So, a guaranteed spot via an open exemption provisional. So, I don't hate the rule at all. I'm okay with it. It's kind of a okay, yeah, I understand. Whatever. Let's move on. For those who may not know, this rule is essentially guaranteeing a spot for a driver that is essentially famous enough that it is better for the series if he is in that particular race. And if a team has 90 days to file a claim to NASCAR for this, it has been, and it will be accepted or denied by NASCAR. The example here is going to be the Trackhouse's Project 91 car with Helio Castroneves, Spider-Man, aka Spider-Man, with a four-time Indy 500 champion, will be making his Daytona 500 debut next month. So that is so he will pretty much be guaranteed a spot in the race. Not going to get any points, any prize money. He won't be taking somebody else's spot in this. The field will just expand to 41 cars. So if he needs to use it, he has it, essentially, for the Daytona 500. Helio Castroneves. So that is the first rule change. The second one, and I like it, is the damaged vehicle policy overhaul. And so pretty much 6 minutes, you gotta get the car fixed up enough to meet the minimum speed. After that, clock goes away and you can actually work on the car. If it cannot be completed in that time frame, then you're out of the race. Now, you are no longer out of the race. You can take it back to the garage, get it fixed up, and get it back out there. And just try to log laps, see if you can gain a spot from somebody else's misfortune. Just like the good old days where you had the modified cars. Oh, those were the good old days. And then the one that has caused this video to happen. If you had the other two, okay, fine, whatever. I don't care. This one is irritating. The playoff waiver adjustment. So as many remember, back on Memorial Day weekend, the Indy 500, it was delayed because of rain. They were eventually able to get it going a couple hours later, but Larson would end up not being able to go from Indy to the Coke 600 in time to get the start. So now, and it was a big controversy at the time, as many know, and I sounded off on this with my previous employer with my writing, which can't really go back and find it, unfortunately. But it is, but pretty much NASCAR was debating on whether to give the waiver to Kyle Larson for missing the Coke 600. That was the debate. It was a stupid debate because if you punish Larson to that degree, you have turned off the entire dirt racing portion of NASCAR, even though, and then you have turned off the good old boys of NASCAR, the true blue loyal fans that have been around forever, which they're already dying off. And you turn off the Kyle Larson fans who were introduced to him when he came in from driving for Chip Ganassi. You have turned all of them off because because it was windy one day on a Tuesday. No rhyme or reason. Because NASCAR has pretty much waived every single person missing a race for every single reason outside of one, but that was because he failed the drug test and had to miss race. They have the class that they got. And, which, completely understandable on that one. But with this, Larson is expanding the sport. He is helping motorsports overall. And you want to punish him, and it was a thought to punish him so severely to take away his chance at a championship because he was going for history when in every other time in the history that the Coke 600 and the Indy 500 ran on the same day, yeah, it could have potentially hurt him points wise, but that is all the penalty should ever be. You don't get points for that race. Move on. That's it. And yet, NASCAR is trying to be so much like the stick and ball sport bullcrap that it is getting harder and harder each and every year that they do these stupid things to watch and say, hey, you should watch this because it is fun. And yet, it's beginning to get no longer fun. That is why you're seeing a max exodus to the world of outlaws, to Formula One. And with how Fox is promoting IndyCar will be making a comeback. If they can, if Fox can really establish the IndyCar series that NBC failed to do. Which, in case you guys haven't seen, the IndyCar races, they are all on the big Fox, the normal Fox, you can get with bunny ears Fox, and that is massive, especially for IndyCar. That is massive. And if IndyCar can put on a season like they did a year ago, you are going to see more and more of an exodus from NASCAR to IndyCar. And if we get more dirt races like the Tulsa Shootout, and the only knock I have on the Tulsa Shootout is they just never really got going. It was just caution after caution after caution, but nonetheless, it was worth it because it had a tremendous finish. But this has but if NASCAR keeps trying to play these stupid games, you are going to win stupid prizes. And it really hurts. It really hurts me to see NASCAR continue to play these stupid games. especially with especially with the playoffs, the stages, and all of it. It has gimmicked it up so much that now my my dad, who is a who is one of the big reasons why I got into NASCAR to begin with when I was just a wee little lad. He can't watch it anymore. He's tired of it. He he has no interest in the Daytona 500, and it's just gone too much overboard. And it hurts because I enjoy those times watching NASCAR and watching racing with him, and I I, I don't blame him one bit, quite honestly, because the product it's good. It's good when it stays raw, but it's so gimmicked up with the stages, with the playoffs, and the rounds that it is no longer. It's no longer a week to week story. The points they don't matter. It it just doesn't matter anymore. And with the charter system, it just it you lose that anybody can make it. If you got a car, you can do something. You, not anymore. And that was one of the massive appeals, especially in the early days. Going to the short track, seeing if the local guy can do anything with the big guys. That's not a thing anymore. And it hasn't been a thing for a long time, but now there is no shot for it because nobody has $30 million sitting around for a charter, and going into the open as an open entry, it's not worth it. Not and it only the Daytona 500. You have cars that are quote unquote in danger of going home, and that makes qualifying worthless. I mean, these are 4 or 5 100 mile races. You got plenty of time to make it up, especially if you're a good car. You got a good car. You just had a bad day in qualifying. But even qualifying is boring because it's no longer a one shot. You get 2 shots at the pole essentially. With this weird way of doing it, and it used to be so simple. Score more points than the other guy and you win. Now, you win one race and then you get hot in the back half of the year, you're champion. Joey Logano, lowest average finishing of any champion in the history of NASCAR. And I'm certainly not knocking Joey Logano. That's the rule. That's the rule. He took advantage of it. But it's just not the way that it should be. And and this season coming up of racing and now I'm still working on learning the IndyCar stuff. So I can't really go deep into that, but I do know last year was a really exciting year. And I watched about half of it before I got way too busy to keep track of everything. But with the with Formula 1, you legitimately didn't know who was going to win from race to race for second half for 3/4 of the season. And there was a real storyline from race to race of can Lando catch Max? Can he catch him? And you had to come back and watch it. You had to make sure you had it on the calendar. Okay, this is when the race is. It's at this time on this channel. And you have the constant storylines of can Lando catch Max? What's wrong with Checo? Where's Piastri? What is happening with Ferrari? What is happening to Mercedes? And you can see it through the point standings because points mean something in Formula One. Points mean something in IndyCar. Points have no meaning in NASCAR now. Well, the playoff points, well, if you win a race in the playoffs, then no, it doesn't matter. And now the playoffs are even more predictable than ever after the first race in the round of 8. Every single year, if I'm remembering this correctly, every single year that whoever has won the first race in the round of 8 has gone on to win the Cup Series championship. If it's not every one of them, it is far more times than not. And that was the case. It was certainly the case last with Bono's 2 championships. Actually, all 3 of them, I believe. If I'm not mistaken. All 3 of them. But ever since the race was moved to Phoenix, each and every single time, whoever has won the first race in the round of 8 has gone on to win the championship. That is predictable. People don't like predictable. You can stop watching after that. Because you already know who the champion is. History says it. And yet, here we are, going into 2025 with the same championship race. And it's going to be predictable. After the first race in the round of 8, you are no longer required to watch the final 3 races because we already know the outcome. But NASCAR ain't going to change that. Why would they? And I'm only hypercritical on NASCAR on this because I love the sport. I want to see it grow, especially with this playoff waiver bullcrap. It is not going to help the sport grow. It is putting a cement ceiling on it. And it is unbreakable. When drivers go out and do other series, it brings people in. And it does branch people out. Keyword, branch. They still love NASCAR. They still love Kyle Larson. But hey, there's this cool thing going on over here with IndyCar. And I just learned this guy, Joseph Newgarden, or Alex Palou, or Alexander Rossi. These guys are fun to watch. I'm going to tune in and watch IndyCar next week because I want to see these guys in their normal habitat. And NASCAR doing this, it sets a very, very bad standard. It sets a very bad standard. And it really, and NASCAR is no longer a sport for the good old boys. It's not. And if you so dare to try to do the Indy 500 Coke 600 double, and if something goes wrong, you better leave that track and get over here, or your shot at winning a championship is in deep, deep trouble. And that's ridiculous. It should never, ever come to that. But, Steve O'Donnell, he has to feel important. Even though as important as he goes on TV and says that he's important, you're not. Steve O'Donnell, you are a menace to this sport. Yeah, Dale Jr. is going to blow smoke up your ass. The TV partners are going to blow smoke up your ass. Here's the reality, Stevie. You are the menace to this sport. And all your minions that are saying, oh, yeah, let's make the number smaller and move it up. So that way the sponsors have more room. because the sponsors are getting their return on the investment. So if we make it bigger, which no, that's not how that works. Marketing 101, brand recognition. There's a reason why everybody remembers Budweiser, number 8, Dale Jr. It was the same car each and every week. You didn't have to sit there and be like, oh, that's a cool car. I wonder who that is. You don't have to sit there and try to look for the number that is now smaller and harder to see. You already knew. That red car with the crown on it, yeah, that's a Bud car. And you didn't have to guess who was in that yellow and red number 5. That's Terry. And it's shocking to me that a sport full of marketing gets this so horribly wrong. And there's now only one driver who has one sponsor the entire year that is recognizable. Fairly recognizable. That's because it is a bank. That is Ally Bank with Alex Bowman, 48. That is it. Everybody else has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sponsors. In this lawsuit that they're going through, this is why Michael Jordan is fighting this so hard. He understands branding. I mean, for God's sake, he is the reason why basketball was as good as it was in the 90s and into the 2000s. The platform that LeBron has jumped off of, that was built by MJ. The foundation was laid by Bird and Magic. Michael made the platform and launched. And so that TV money that NASCAR is hoarding, it has to go to the teams, to where it is no longer costing them an arm and a leg, sponsors an arm and a leg to sponsor the whole year. That way you can get the brand recognition and actually get return on investment. You can't get return on investment when you are on the car 25% of the time. At that point, you're just a car with cool paint schemes. Oh, what's it gonna be this week? Oh, cool. That's cool. Okay. Forget next week. Forgot. Okay. Whatever. But here we are. So, anyway, now that entire rant is done and over with, and then the race manipulation crackdowns and suspensions, as we all saw in the final race in the round of 4. Well, some watched it, others already knew what the outcome was going to be, so there was no need to watch it. I watched it because I love Martinsville. But anyway, as we all saw, the 1 and the 3 playing block because William Byron could not lose another spot. And they ran block for their Chevy friend, allowing William Byron into the championship. Or, even though, and he had Bill, wall riding, NASCAR, black flagged him for that, yada yada. Which, that, different discussion, different day. But anyway, it seems like it is a very vague rule. 100%, which stated that the competitors must compete at 100%. So, I'm just going to read the paragraph here. Last year, a major controversy unfolded in the penultimate race of the year. It was the second last race of the year. But anyway, as manufacturers appear to manipulate the outcome of the race in an effort to get their car into the championship four. This resulted in massive penalties for all drivers and teams involved, but not the manufacturers themselves. NASCAR will now take aim at the manufacturers themselves should a case of race manipulation like this arise again. the risk of losing manufacturing points, wind tunnel hours, or even RCFD runs. NASCAR has also adjusted the rather vague 100% rule, which stated that competitors must compete at 100% of their ability with the goal of achieving the best possible finishing position. Now the rule's wording is focused more directly on manipulating the outcome of a championship event. Additionally, NASCAR will allow the deferral of suspensions that result in a technical infraction without appealing. Previously, an appeal had to be placed before the deferral could happen. However, other suspensions will be made effective immediately. So pretty much, which is still rather vague. Um, I think you make it incredibly simple. If you are, if we find out that you are manipulating a race, if there is any funny business going on, like we saw last year, which you could make a case either way, but we'll go with the more extreme case of MWR. If you're almost, I think over a decade ago at Richmond, well over a decade. Oh my goodness, old. Now, if we see something like that, have to throw a massive book at him. Not just the book, books. Several of them, preferably heavy. I would recommend a massive fine, 500,000 plus suspension for the crew chief. We'll say 8 races. 8 races. 10 races. We'll go a third of the year suspension. No contact. The driver, 5 race suspension. And no, you don't get the owner's points for that too. That car is parked. There is now one less car in each and every single race that car is suspended. And so, yeah. So, owner, fined $500,000, $1 million, whatever the case. Insanely high, incredibly high. I think the highest is 400,000. You know what? I like $750,000. Let's go with $750,000 fine. A 10 race suspension for the crew chief, and a 5 race park for the car and driver. And a and if the driver is locked into the playoffs, well, you are now disqualified from the playoff. And if you are not in the playoff, then you are parked. If you're not in the playoff, then yeah, then well, I guess you get off a little bit easy on that. I can't come up with one off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, I could easily see this getting manipulated on many different fronts, especially at the Daytonas and Talladegas and Atlanta, where if you're a Ford pushing a Chevy and you got Penske boys on the bottom and you're up top, and you obviously don't have a very legitimate shot of winning, so you know what? Gotta help my brother's win, my blue oval friends win. So you back up, you back off. That would be race manipulation. That never gets called though. So is that going to get called? Is that going to get called again? And that's why I really wanted to specify it more being an MWR situation. Now, I would have to go back and look at the Martinsville tapes and see exactly what was said. I know there were some moments where, like, ooh, that didn't sound good, kind of feel. But that wouldn't warrant that sort of crackdown. I, but I do think it warranted a serious crackdown of, and I would even throw in, and I don't think I would drop the hammer on it because it was so light, and it was kind of sneaky, and you really want to be you really want to be careful with throwing a that kind of hammer around, especially with what could be lost if, say, there was, in my world, a 5 race park. The Daytona 500 is in less than 5 races at that point, and and for that, I feel like that would have been overkill. So obviously, you'd have a scale. You would have a scale, and what I would have done is, well, you're parked for Phoenix, and that's it. And there it is. And yes, I would have those carry over into the next year, and it would follow both the team and the driver. So if the driver were to sign with a different team, well, he's not starting until his suspension is up. And if that includes no Daytona 500, well, no Daytona 500. Shouldn't have pulled that crap. And if it's a new driver coming to the team, well, sorry, you signed with them. No Daytona 500 for you. They shouldn't have done what they did. You're just collateral damage. So, those are, that is the news of NASCAR. So, if you would please, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening via podcast, make sure to download the podcast, hit the follow button so you don't miss an episode on all the many platforms we have on there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next time.